There's a new writer on episode 9? Is Colin Trevaro's script being scrapped? And I thought Rian Johnson was still writing it. Well, what the heck's going on? We gotta talk about it. What is up, YouTube? It's Josh. This is the Den of Nerds. I'm sitting down with James from the Rebel Scum Podcast. James, how are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well, getting over the whole domino drama. But anyways, getting right into this video, we are going to talk about Hollywood Reporter, the Hollywood Reporter, as it were. They laid it out there that they believe a new writer is working on the untitled episode 9 picture that is going to be directed by Colin Trevaro. So real quick, guys, I'm going to lay this out for you. We're going to talk about the story in episode 9, the implications of having a new writer on there. We're going to talk about the production of the script, and then we'll finish off the video by talking about this guy, the guy Jack Thorne, who is now going to be doing writing duties on episode 9. So, James, are you ready?
I'm more than ready. Let's go.
Let's go. So, first of all, story. For me, it almost doesn't matter what happens in The Last Jedi in regards to episode 9, insofar as episode 9 is very important. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, episode 9 is arguably the most popular, the most important of the new 3 movies. We were talking about in a video on my channel a little while ago that this is the one that needs to set up future Star Wars films without setting them up necessarily. This one, wherever this one ends, the saga has to continue on from. So we need to get, something needs to happen where they can pick it up later on, or they can go back in time and tell us stuff as well. I think episode 9 is, you're right, it's probably the most important of all.
Yeah, it's
3 of these new films.
Incredibly important film. You have to have some kind of a resolution for our heroes. You have to. And by the way, real quick, I hope if you're watching this video, if you hear the thunder in the background of this video, it is literally storming. Which could be considered a bad omen for episode 9, but let's not go there.
That's funny because it stormed here yesterday. You're getting it. It's coming by.
Oh, okay. We're getting the Canada storm. James sent a storm down to us.
I sent it. I was like, he's going to badmouth episode 9?
Right, exactly. So, for episode 9, there's a lot of different things that we think are going to happen. Do you remember when Carrie said that the way it was going to work is that episode 7 was going to be Harrison's movie, episode 8 was going to be Mark's movie, and then episode 9 was going to be her movie. And then, obviously after her unfortunate passing, we heard that episode 9 was going to heavily feature Princess Leia. So the question is, do you think that's what they were going to do to set up her to be the big player in episode 9?
Yeah, I think that's Rian Johnson. Whether or not he wrote a script or a dream or whatever he ended up writing for episode 9, I think it did tie in a lot to episode 8, The Last Jedi. And I think it relied heavily on Carrie Fisher, and then when she passed, they had to look at it and say, what do we do? And when they decided not to recast or bring her in digitally, I think they decided that they needed to overhaul the whole thing because she was probably such a major player in the entire thing. Like, who knows? Even the scenes she wasn't in, her character may have impacted those scenes in a way. And I just read earlier that I don't know if it was Rian Johnson. Someone said that in The Last Jedi, Princess Leia is getting a huge, grand send-off. That is it. They're going to send her off in some way, shape, or form in The Last Jedi because we're never going to see her on film again. So I think knowing what they have to do going forward, I think that's where all of the reshoots came from, or the rewrites of episode 9 came from.
Right.
Was mostly that it was going to be her film. Now they have to figure out whose film is it going to be.
Yeah, so I think that, it kind of beautifully segues from story into production, because I think you're right. From a story perspective, they had this thing set up. I think Leia was going to be a big part of what they were doing in 9, and perhaps that is the whole reason that Colin is doing writing from whatever Rian had. There's rumors that it's an outline. There's rumors that it was full script. He had written something for episode 9, and then after the passing of Carrie, they had that big meeting in January with all the major heads of Lucasfilm, and they decided what to do. I think they made some decisions then and there, and that was the reason that Trevaro was brought on to write and it could even be the reason that this Jack Thorne guy, is now doing punch-ups. So, what do you think? So, do you think that's it, or do you think there's anything to be said for like Disney Film saying, "Okay, Ryan, that's really, really great, but this is going to be Colin's movie, so we need him to figure some story things out for himself," or do you think it was strictly because of Carrie Fisher's passing? I guess what I'm really asking is, let's say if there's a version of this where Carrie didn't die, is it a written by Rian Johnson, directed by Colin Trevaro film?
I think it's a story by Rian Johnson film. That's what I think. I think
he still would have.
Yeah, I don't think it was a full script, because the time he had to write episode 8 and then shoot episode 8 while rewriting episode 8 and editing episode 8, like Rian Johnson's almost like an indie filmmaker, and it seems like they were giving him that feel on The Last Jedi. Like it was his film, he got to do what he wanted, and I just think the amount of time all of that would take, it was too much time for him to write a completed screenplay for episode 9. I think he could come up with an outline, a treatment, something along those lines, enough that Trevaro or whoever else could go in and be like, okay, this is what we have.
Right.
What's going forward. Also, movies change all the time. So even if Carrie Fisher didn't pass away, things would have changed in the editing of The Last Jedi, where Colin Trevaro would be like, oh, well, that's not working with this. So now how do we, you know, and then either 8 has to change or 9 has to change. And at this stage, it's easier for 9 to change than 8 to change. True. So I think either way, I think he would have got a story by credit. Trevaro, who knows if he would have been the one to be like, I'm just going to write it. I think he would have. But I think either way, we would have had another screenwriter come in there at this stage of the game.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's interesting. I think that you're probably right. Like, just even without Carrie passing, it just makes sense for them to let Colin get his hands on that story before they start shooting, because look, it's his movie ultimately. So I think that it makes sense. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking things that Ryan had in mind, because I think more so than JJ, he probably had a lot of the story figured out, right? JJ was really pulling kind of at straws, developing things and you know, doing that narrative to set up. I think that what they really tasked Rian Johnson with was figuring out the meat of this story. Act 2 is the meat of any great Act 3-act story anyways, but you do need a resolution. So I think that either way, Colin would have had his hands on it, but I think that because she passed, that's obviously a big change. That's a big reason that they needed him to be doing this. And, you know, bringing on Jack Thorne is actually, like, to me, is a good thing. And they might even bring on more writers. You know what I mean? Look, Disney Film is not afraid to do, you know, movie by committee at this point. And, you know, I gotta be honest, we've talked a lot about it, you know, the Han Solo thing and everything. We just have to wait and see. If that movie comes out and is great, then that's 2 in a row, and you can't fault them, and you can never really question anything they do. They have a strict adherence to excellence, and they're not afraid of shaking things up and making a movie by committee, much like Pixar. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can I cite Akbar on the Han Solo film for a second?
Let's do it.
Gotta do it. Have you noticed how much Ron? Yeah, well, you did, because you actually brought to my attention the first time, early July.
Yep.
Ron Howard is Instagramming everything. He's showing very little, but 100% more than we saw before. Like, it's almost like Lucasfilm has said, okay, you can show this much. Let's show them that the ship's still running, that this is still happening.
Yeah, I agree.
That we have let them all know it's all good in there. Yeah. And just do these like little tidbits. There's not enough.
I think it's all coming from him. I gotta be honest here. I think it's coming.
Well, he'd have
from
to get
him.
the okay though.
No, I don't think that's the way it works. He signed an NDA, okay? And he's, as the director, because it's like this, their situation's a little bit different. So they have hardcore NDA. He probably signed a document about this big when it's in a binded.
He doesn't even know what's in it.
Yeah, he doesn't even know what's in it. But the thing is, so it's the same reason that Rian Johnson was able to shoot those black and white photos all over set. He can do whatever he wants. But he
never posted those, though.
No, he never posted those. But what I'm saying is he more or less has free reign in a way that other people don't. But they could definitely slap his hand if he were to do something that was kind of ridiculous.
Like the trash. I think the trash can one.
Well, it's gone.
Slap, I think.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah.
So they probably already slapped his hand and said that. And, you know, like, I got to respect the guy because look, he's the guy that took over the Han Solo film. Like, look, Ron Howard has an amazing career and has an amazing brand, but I promise you, he will be known as the guy that took over the Han Solo movie. For better or for worse, that's what he's going to be known for, which is weird, right? But I think that he realizes that, and him using social media in this way is really smart from a branding perspective for even his own personal brand. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't hurt the film at all as long as he's not giving anything away. And honestly, it puts the focus more on... He probably had a talk with someone after he did the trash thing. You know what I mean? And they were probably like, look, we get what you're doing, but you can't paint this thing in a bad light. And they might have even, tried to reprimand him. But he's in a beautiful spot. Because what is he really worried about them? Them firing him? Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, they're going to fire Ron Howard too? No, there's no way. He could post the script online and they'd probably just take it down. You know what I mean? But yeah, no, that's a whole thing. But it's, I don't know, man. It's an interesting situation when it comes to episode 9. Because of Carrie passing, because of, obviously the stakes are high. So, I mean, did you look into this Jack Thorne guy at all? Did you research this guy?
Just a little bit. I noticed he did write the Harry Potter play, The Cursed Child, right? I have not. Right. Have you read that?
No.
I haven't read it either. I got it. I think my wife has. Brock definitely has. And it's funny because early on in the stages of the Rebel Scum podcast when I was doing with Brock, like a year ago, pretty much a year ago to this day, we were talking and I came up and that Cursed Child just came out and he read it. And one of our first, second, or third episodes, I was talking about it. And I came up with the storyline for The Last Jedi, unknowing what it was called. Right. And he goes, "Oh, that's the Cursed Child storyline."
Wow, really?
And it's kind of funny. Well, it wasn't exactly the Cursed, but it was similar. And it's funny that they would get a writer of that, whereas if I can't remember, I honestly could not tell you what I said, but I remember he said it was the Cursed Child. And I've always thought it. I'm like, because I kind of feel like these new films go the Harry Potter direction, because I think a lot of things like to pull from Harry Potter now,
right?
For better or worse or whatever. Even subconsciously, like the Rey thing, like was Rey left in Jakku because she was too powerful and her parents didn't understand her and they just left her there to be raised by, Harry Potter's uncle, basically. So like, there's little things, right? So I was just talking about that, and it's interesting that now that this writer who wrote The Cursed Child is on to write episode 9.
Oh, the Cursed Child.
Cursed Child.
Yeah. So I looked into this guy a little bit. To me, what I see on there is that he first of all, he's award-winning. He's an award-winning writer. He's a producer as well. He's been producing some shows since like 2013. And so he's really involved in the business. A lot of his stuff has been either working on adaptations or like he's credited a couple times in his IMDb as like additional materials, which means he's a punch-up writer. So so he's probably being brought on just to punch up the script. Like I always find this kind of interesting. Like what it really means to me is like, well, we've got a situation here where you've got probably a good story. I mean, there's things that were put in place either by Rian Johnson or by other people that make it really, really good. But also something I think can get lost in the focusing on the big elements. I think that is exactly why Tony Gilroy came in to punch up Rogue One, because especially when it comes to Star Wars, like the epicness and the grand scale that you're working with is so important that you probably lose sight of the little character moments. So I think they bring in people like Jack Thorne to come in and kind of punch it up. You know what I mean? Just make it a little bit tighter in the sense of dialogue and character moments.
Yeah, humanize it a little bit.
Right, exactly. So that's kind of what I think we're going to get with Jack Thorne. And honestly, this is probably the last thing I want to say and the last point I want to make. That excites me because I don't trust Colin Trevaro. So, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think? I've kind of have an issue.
I loved Safety Not Guaranteed. I thought that was a great film. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
No.
I have it on Blu-ray. I bought it. Oh God! Whenever it came out on Blu-ray, but only in the United States of America. So I had to track it down in your country and pay more for it to get it shipped here. And it cost it's like a $5 Blu-ray. It cost me like $30.
Jeez.
Absolutely love that film. Thought it was fantastic. I think it's on Netflix. It's fantastic. Jurassic World. I liked it. I was underwhelmed. I liked it at the same way I like the third Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Like that. I put it up against the third one.
Sure.
I enjoy it. It's not. I mean, I think it got a lot of hate after it came out. Kind of similar to The Force Awakens, actually, where a year later people are like, oh, it's not that good. You know, and that's what happens when you try to when you key on nostalgia too much and you focus more on the nostalgia than the story. It doesn't hold up because the nostalgia's gone. Like it's gone once you get rid of that.
For sure.
So I think that was the thing. You know, there are little problems I had with Jurassic World too. Like, why did those ball cars work outside the park? Like, no, like any park, it would be first of all on a track, and you would never be able to take that anywhere you want. There was little problems I had with it, but whatever. And then when it was funny because they announced Gareth Edwards like the weekend Godzilla came out and made a lot of money. And I was like, is that really your choice? Like, is that how you're gonna play this?
But the thing is, they didn't cast him or they didn't hire him because of that movie at all. He had been hired for a long time. But you're right. They saw that Godzilla came out and they were like, announce it. You know what I mean? Yeah,
and it seemed like it was then Jurassic World came out and it was Trevorrow's doing 9. I was like, that's a knee-jerk reaction, whether or not it was. I mean, I'm sure he was in talks before that, but I mean, there has to be something to be said too because he worked with Jurassic World. He comes from the independent world. Jurassic World, big budget. Studio film. He was able to work in that environment, which I think they kind of need for Star Wars, and it shows with Lord and Miller right there that's what they kind of need. But to get back to your point, do I trust him? I'm completely fine with this as well because I think it's always better when you have a big movie if you bounce the idea off of somebody anyway. And somebody comes and says, this is good, but maybe if you just kind of flesh this out, and Trevorrow's like, look, I am wrapped up in the design of this and in the schedule of this. Exactly. Just hire someone to come in and do it. And it seems like the one thing with Trevaro, whether you like him or not, is his Book of Henry bombed. He took it on the chin. He said, look, I was, I'm sorry. He was like, I'm still the guy to do Star Wars. And he's saying all the right things still.
Yep.
And I think he wants this movie badly.
So too.
And that's why I kind of would trust him because I think how badly he wants Star Wars.
That's fair. I guess it's just because I love Rian Johnson so much. But I tell you, in 2 years...
Oh, if I had a choice.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. In 2 years, when we see Colin at Star Wars Celebration, and at that point, like, you and I will probably be hanging out with him backstage because we're blowing up, folks. We're blowing up.
Well, I'm playing a Porg in Episode 9.
Oh, that's amazing. So,
yeah.
Damn.
I already got
instantly going to be more famous than anyone I know. No, but in all seriousness, in 2019, when we get to talk to him a little bit more and interact with him a little bit more, maybe my opinion will change. For now, I'm like really hesitant because because I feel like it's so important. I would have almost preferred them to flip it. Trevaro do Last Jedi and Ryan to do the last one. I have nothing but faith in Ryan, and I think you and I are on the same page with that. He impressed the hell out of me at Celebration. So
yeah,
it's it's hard. The more control goes away from him and goes into the hands of this guy, it's just iffy because I don't really trust him. You know what I mean? Like you said, I didn't like Jurassic Park and Book of Henry. Like I don't know what that is. Luckily, it's so obscure. I probably won't check it out because that would probably infuriate me. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're with it, guys. That's pretty much all I've got for this video. Just want to talk about this news when it comes to the world of the Wars of the Stars with my main man, James, from the Rebel Scum Podcast. James, tell people about this Rebel Scum Podcast thing and where they can find you online.
On YouTube. You can find us on YouTube, on iTunes. You can't find us on Google Play because I don't know why. It says we're there, but we're not.
Same thing with us on iTunes, yeah.
Yeah, so you can find us on iTunes, but check us out on the YouTube Rebel Scum Podcast. We do like 3 or 4 shows a week where we talk. If you just like Rebels, we do a show just on Rebels.
Yep.
If you like arguing, we have an arguing show. We try to cover every base of Star Wars that we can in a fresh way, but a familiar one.
Yes, they do a ton of awesome videos. If you like Star Wars like I like Star Wars, go check them out. And I'm on their channel a lot. James is on here a lot. We love talking Star Wars, so
yeah,
you'll get used to seeing us together talking the War of the Stars. As always, guys, I mean, you find me here at the Den of the Nerds. Subscribe to this channel if you have not to stay up to date with everything we're doing. Star Wars comic book, all that jazz, Domino. So, yeah, subscribe to the channel. As I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and nerdy day. See ya!